Hey. I was thinking, and so I wanted to come on here and share my thoughts with you. As you may know, I am reading from my book, The Beautiful Journey, during the month of October. I just want to give you a little bit of my cancer experience and also share lessons that I learned. I want to give inspiration, hope, and also some encouragement for those who are on their own beautiful journey. Today, I was thinking, like, what am I going to talk about? I know the last time I teased if I would talk about the next chapter or not, and I wasn't sure because it's in the book and you can always purchase the book. But I remember when I was trying to decide if I was going to even put this part in my book, like, should I talk about it or not? Because it's not something that I talked about in my blogs. And as you know, my book is based on those blogs. But I figure I will give you a little bit of it, not all of it, but I just wanted to share some of it. The title is It's Worth a Try, right? And the quotation for this comes from Nelson Mandela. And it says, part of being optimistic is keeping one's head pointed toward the sun, one's feet moving forward. As I said, this chapter was not included in my blogs. Most people didn't even know about this. And I had to ask myself if I should share it. When I wrote this book, the main purpose says were to educate and inspire people, to make people more aware about breast cancer and all that's entailed. This definitely was part of it. It was something that I had to think about. I will say this, writing my book was very cathartic. It truly healed me. It healed me being able to tell this story over again and to be able to just release it. But as I was preparing to start my chemo treatment, there were a lot of things going through my mind. Besides the fact that I didn't want to die, I was 39 years old, single, no children. And anyone who knows me knows that I consider myself the children whisperer. Kids love me and I love the kids. And I didn't have any, and never did I think I would be that person that didn't. But when I received the cancer diagnosis, my best friend kept saying, would you please go see somebody about freezing your eggs? And I'm just like, that's the last thing on my mind. I'm just wanting to live. I just want life. That's all I'm asking for. But she kept saying it. So I'm like, okay, you know what? When I talked to the doctor, he said, if you want to ever have kids, you should go see someone because he wasn't sure the effect that chemo would have on my eggs. And so I made an appointment to see a reproductive endocrinologist. When I think about this, it just makes me think about where we are in this political season right now, where people are trying to take away people's rights when it comes to fertility and their own reproductive stuff. It just really is baffling to me. But when I met with the endocrinologist, he told me about egg freezing and embryo freezing. Egg freezing is what it sounds like. They take your egg, they freeze it. Embryo freezing is when they take your egg and then they add a sperm to it to fertilize it, and then they freeze the embryo. So, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but basically the doctor gave me the number to the ladies, the nurses, the IVF nurses, and I set up a meeting for them just to find out what the next steps would be. By the time I arrived home, they had called me and was like, here's your date, come see us there. And I can tell you, these were the best people. These nurses that try to help people bring a life in the world were just so amazing. And it just made me feel good. Like, it really encouraged me to go ahead and move forward in the process. Now, the problem with this is that I was unmarried. And in the state of Ohio, if you're unmarried, you cannot, well, I can't say in the state of Ohio, I would say at the clinic, because I don't know if it was an Ohio thing or a clinic thing. It may have been a clinic thing, that you cannot get a sperm from someone you know unless you are engaged or married. And they do that for legal purposes, because if it, doesn't work out, then what happens? That's where the problem came into play. because what am I supposed to do? You know, I wasn't married, I was not engaged. And so basically, they gave you some websites. You go on the website, you look at the people, you see what color they are, the color of their hair, their eyes, how tall. If you paid more, you can get pictures. So I'm sitting here listening to them talk about this and meeting with a social worker because they wanted to make sure that I was in a sound mind, that I could actually be somebody's mama. But I was thinking, like, am I really supposed to pick a baby daddy from a website? Like that just, it was challenging. And then there was a disparity between Black donors and white donors. And so to get a Black donor, it was very, very few people to choose from because the clinic they had their own place that they used for sperm. And so you only could get what they offered. Yeah. So, there were things that had to be done. I'm not going to go into everything because it was TMI. But I could tell you that in order for things to happen for me, it needed to happen quickly. My doctor told me, your chemo is going to start on this day. So if you can make everything happen prior to that, great, but we're not going to delay your chemo for this. And so there were some things I didn't have control over, like my menstrual cycle. I could not make it come. It came when it came, but they needed that to start. And, fortunately it did. So I will give you that much. But I can tell you that this process was expensive. It was expensive. I had insurance, which paid for some. I was blessed that people donated some medicine. I remember I went to a pharmacy and I was supposed to start my medication, so I had to go pick it up. And she asked for my medical ID number. And I replied, M as in Mary, D as in David, C as in cat, Z as in zebra, X as in xylophone. And the young lady on the other end began to laugh at me. And I asked, like, what's so funny? And she laughed and said, X as in xylophone? I'm like, yeah. And then I realized that she probably thought xylophone started with a Z, right? So I asked her, like, well, what would you have said? Because if you don't know the xylophone starts with an X, like, what word would you use? And she told me ex-boyfriend. That's what she said. And I laughed because I was like, I know she's joking. She had to be right. But I do know when I went to go pick up this medication, I needed to make sure I saw her because I was like, I need to know who thinks ex-boyfriend starts with the X. But nonetheless, here we are. But yeah, this journey was something else. I won't tell you what the outcome was of it, but it was. I'm grateful to have been able to go through it, because one thing that it did do for me in all that I was going through is to give me hope. It gave me the opportunity to be able to control something that I felt otherwise I couldn't control. I felt everything else was just happening, but this I was in control of. I was in control of whether to do it or not, what I wanted to do, etc. So, yeah. One of the reasons that I shared this in the book is because when I was going through my own journey and wanted to know about this hormone stuff, and I can tell you, those hormones be all over the place. I didn't have anybody. I didn't have anyone who I could share this with because we don't talk about it as Black women. A lot of people keep that part of their lives secret. I was fortunate towards the end that I found someone who had shared with me that they went through it and it made it that much better. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to share it in the book, because I wanted people to know, like, you are not alone. Like, if you have questions about that or need to know anything about my experience, I'm here to help. And so for today's questions for you to reflect on, I want you to think about what information are you willing to share that can help somebody else in their journey, no matter how private it is. embarrassing, scary, no matter what it is, like what information would you be willing to share with someone to help them as they're in their own journey? And then I'll just ask this one too, because I love this one. Like, what are you willing to risk to achieve the dreams that you have for yourself? Because my dream at this point was to have a kid. That's what I wanted. And I would just leave with this one. What steps will you take now immediately that will lead you to those dreams and desires that you have? So that is that. So you know a little bit about that journey, but not all of it. And it was something else. So anyway, that is that. And until the next time, bye-bye.